Turbo motors are one of the more advanced items you'll be producing towards the late game of Satisfactory, and all too often I've heard that the late game of Satisfactory just gets too complicated and people end up hitting a wall and stop playing. So today we're going to be breaking down how to make turbo motors with a simple layout, and this comes back to the probe method of planning factories, which I mentioned in my last Let's Play episode. So if you're interested in that, I will link that video in the bottom of the description below in the videos tab. Now, the important thing for this video though is that we've broken the layout down into items that are more important to the build's layout, and then basic resources that you'll be hopefully providing this facility, which should be easy enough to complete separately and move to this layout. So we're only focusing on the later tier element of this build. That way, hopefully it keeps it all much simpler. So for this video, you will need a single alt recipe for the turbo motors, which is going to be the rigger motors. That's to produce the normal motors. It just works out slightly better at simplifying this layout, though you could use the basic motor line recipe if you wish. Now, on top of that, you are going to need the following low tier resources per minute. So that's 56.25 quartz crystal, 7.813 reinforced iron plates, 3.75 stators, 3.75 rotors, 165 aluminum ingots, 73.75 cable, 75 copper sheets, 120 plastic, 60 rubber, 25 copper ingots, 197.5 nitrogen, and 37.15 water. Now, I know there's a lot of 0.5s or 0.75s or how many resources that we need. Don't let that distract you too much. Basically, you just need to provide at least that amount, if not a little bit more. They don't need to be completely load balanced lines. And even if I show you the layout, you can see here that we're providing more than that. And all that's doing is just saturating up the lines, but it's still going to run efficiently if you do that. It just means that you don't need to send as many resources as, say, a full line to get this up and running. Now, I can appreciate some of you may prefer seeing everything being produced in one spot and going through the whole build, but with resources like turbo motors, it's going to make the video much longer than it needs to be. And at this point in the game, I suspect you'll already know how to produce the earlier resources and also transporting them comfortably around the world. So hopefully you'll be okay with us leaving those parts of the layout out. For this build, we are going to be using a 20 by 20 grid. That gives us enough space for all the logistics, and that is the space between the orange and black striped border. However, as you can see here, the whole facility will fit in the red boundary, which is a 15 by 14 grid. And the idea is to make this as easy for you to check out and work out how to build it from here. So we're going to go through and work out what is in each section, and then we're going to get it up and running. So hopefully this will be a nice, easy build for you to understand. Now, in this particular layout, we have all of our resources in the lower right-hand corner of the build. That's where they're all entering, and we'll do that for the purpose of this video, just to make it nice and easy. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is to set up your assemblers in the lower right here. That's in between these two boxes. So I'm going to place one, followed by another one, and these are going to be producing your aluminium alclad sheets, and we're going to need to overclock these. In fact, it would be a good idea for me to check how many power shards we're going to need in total for this. So I will let you know after doing this. But each one of these are going to be set to 125% clock speed. And then from here, we're going to want to set up our little manifold. Well, I guess it's a load balancer setup. So for this, I'm just going to check. We only need Mark 1 lifts. So we'll have on the outside our Mark 1 lifts. And then we'll grab ourselves our splitters. It's going to come in from this side and work its way down to here. And then underneath we'll also have another one. I'm going to make sure that we've got plenty of room here so that you can actually see how the layout is. So let's connect all of these up. And then on the outside, we're going to want to merge these together. Having just checked, we're going to need a total of 6 power shards for this build. I'm sorry I didn't mention that at the beginning. Okay, so we're back at the build. The first thing that we're going to want now that we have this section set up is we are going to bring in our copper ingots from this section here. And then we're going to need to make sure that we have some space in between here. So we're going to have, we just grab this for now, we're going to have our rubber followed by our plastic, our copper sheets, our cable, and then we're going to have our aluminum ingots. Now with the aluminum ingots, we're going to have to do something a little bit funky with these. You can see that I've put 2 little signs here indicating what we need. We're going to need a total of 165 aluminum ingots per minute, which means we're going to need at least a tier 3 conveyor. And so we're going to place this right at the top here, and then from here I'm going to grab a smart splitter. And this is going to be really important because it's going to allow us to do a 90-75 split. And there's a few ways we can do this. We can do 60 in to the north of the grid and then split another 60 4 ways to get the 75 and then merge. Or we could do a Mark 1 line, so 60 followed by splitting it off. So we've got 30 and 30, and then have another line, which will be a Mark 1 of 60. So let's do that for this. We've got a smart splitter, and then we're going to need a normal splitter. Don't worry, everything will make sense in a moment. So we've piled it up 3 high, and we're going to connect these 2 together. So this is going to be a Mark 1 line with 60 resources. We're going to set this to any, and then we're going to do the same on the left-hand side. So once again, any, and then we're going to send the overflow to the north. And what that means, with 165 items going to be on this line, 120 items are going to be split between this line and the second one, and then 45 will be sent up to a merger like so. So we've got our 45 going across to the merger, and then we're going to have 30 going across here. And if we place another merger a little bit further along, we have 30 going in that direction, 30 this direction from the 60 here, and then we're going to grab the other 60 and bring that across to there. As you can see from here, we're going to just overlay very quickly the layout or the direction of the resources. From here, we're going to need to connect that across to our awesome assemblers producing the aluminum alclad sheets. Now we're going to have the rest going in this direction, which will be to produce the aluminum frames. In fact, we can just bring this back onto the bus. There's going to be 90 on here, so you're going to want at least a Mark II line. And I guess we could do that section next. So here we have, in this little box, a constructor. This constructor is going to be producing our aluminum casing, sorry, not frames. It's going to run at 100% clock speed, and it needs 90 aluminum ingots per minute to run. So we're running this alongside the little red box here. Now we're going to set it up in straight mode to feed directly into there. And there we go. We have the first 2 segments of this done. Next thing that I want to do is to get to work on the heat sinks. Now the heat sinks are going to be placed in this red and white box, which is going to be aligned to the merger. So we have the right input of this assembler aligned to the merger, and we're going to place a second one next to that. These are going to be producing heat sinks at 100% clock speed each. Nice, simple one. There we go. And we'll bring the resources up. Why not? This is going to need to be a Mark II because we've got 75 resources on this line. And for this, we just need to split them evenly. It's between 2 assemblers, so it's a nice, simple load balance. Got a feeling that's not going to be straight. I didn't think it would. I'm going to pull this back. Sorry. I don't make it easy. Here we go. So we're going to do the same system again, but all I'm doing differently is I'm going to snap the splitter to the elevator here. Make sure it's a Mark II or Mark III. And then we're going to grab another splitter and we're going to place it directly onto here. It's just an easy way to ensure that they're all in the right alignment. Now, in order to produce these, we have our 75 alclad aluminum sheets per minute being produced, but we do need a total of 45 copper sheets per minute. So we're just going to grab our splitter and we're going to place it just in front, and this is going to take those resources. It's going to be from over here. I'm not going to worry too much about this section because before we do that, we are going to need to sort out the buses here. So, for example, we're going to want our Mark 1 belt of rubber running across here. Also, there's currently a bug in the game, so if you're using the straight mode and you're running along a straight distance, oh, it's fine. I don't know if they've just updated it or whether I need to do it across another segment. Here, you can see how it's slightly going off from that straight section. So if you are doing just a straight segment after you've done a right angle, make sure you do that in default mode. And to clear that up, you just need to rotate it slightly. But anyway, we're going to have our rubber, not quite here. We need to bring it up and along, I think here will do. So this is going to take our rubber across to our I can't remember what we call them, cooling systems. There we go. Next we have our plastic on its Mark II line, and what we're going to do with this one is bring it up to about this point, and we're going to grab a splitter and we're just going to place it in line with the input here. We'll connect the Mark II to this, and then we're going to throttle the line. So we need 60 resources going to our computers. So we'll send them up on the right. And by using a Mark 1 line with a Mark 2 input, we know that only 60 can come through here. So we have another 60, which will head up to the circuit board assemblers. So let's just connect them together. And then we're going to need our copper sheets, which you can see they're already there. And that is the next thing for us. So for this, we're going to set up another load balancer the exact same way as we have done before. Or if you want, you can get a little bit creative, but I wouldn't recommend it. Now, as we only need 30 on this section, we're only using a Mark 1, but we do have 45 over here. So in order to do that, we're going to grab a splitter, and we're going to place it aligned to this section here with the heat sinks. And we'll grab a Mark II lift. We'll run this line all the way. So we've got our 75 copper sheets coming along here, and we're going to do a merger. Oh, this will need to be a smart splitter thinking about it. So we're going to have our overflow again going to the right, and then our normal line of 60 resources will come into this position. So with our splitters now, we're going to take that Mark 1 belt and we're going to send 30 towards the heat sinks, which is combining with the 15 left over to produce, to have 45. We can have that as a Mark 1 line. And then we'll have the 30 that we need going all the way to here. So at this point, we should have, if you're following this along, our aluminum alclad sheets being produced, our heat sinks, our circuit boards, and our aluminum casing. So next, let's look at our computers. This is the first manufacturer that we're going to be placing down. This is going to be in this orange box here, and we're just gonna have it right at the front of that box for us, right in the center. So for this, we are going to need the circuit boards. This is going to be overclocked to 150%. You can see that we need a total of 15 circuit boards, which is all of these. So all we need to do is grab a merger, and we're going to place it, I was going to say here, it's going to be easier for us. We just place this slightly so that it's aligned to that output, thinking about it. Just there. Make sure that it's at 150%, and we're going to run these circuit boards all the way through to that entrance. Next, we need to bring in the plastic. So with the plastic, we do have it here. Now, if you remember rightly, we had 60 plastic going up this line, and we're going to have the other 60 run across to here. As you can see, we need, and that's going to be super simple to set up. So we're just gonna grab that. And then the next thing we need is our cable. We're going to need 30 cable. Unfortunately, we do need 43.75 cable later on in this grid. So what we're going to do here is grab ourselves a smart splitter. We'll just place that down here for now. And then we're going to need a merger. And we're going to do the same system that we did earlier on. So we're going to set this up so that we have any to the right. This is going to prioritize these cables to the computer. And then we're going to have overflow in the front. This is because we're going to have a total of 73.75 resources on this line, which means we can prioritize this line here. Just trying to think how we do this cleanly. Let's move that over here. And we're going to place our splitter. So we'll have 60 cable sent up to this section, 30 of which will go to our computer, and then the other 30 will head into our merger along with that extra 13.75. Next, let's connect this up. So this line for the cable needs to be a Mark II belt up to this section or greater. So let's just run this all the way along to our input. So at this point, we've sorted out our computers. We've got cable heading up. The next thing that we need to do will be, I think, the cooling systems. So this is going to require our blender, and we're going to place this, I guess we can do it in the middle section. And we are going to have our water, which is 37.5 water per minute, coming from over here. I mean, you can bring this in from wherever you want. But just to reference that is off. Ooh, can't be doing that. So let's just color that so we know that's water. And then we have another pipe, which is going to be our nitrogen gas. And we can run that alongside. Just don't get them confused. So that is the nitrogen one. The other thing that we need for this is going to be both heat sinks and rubber. Now we only need, if we just overclock this to 125, 15 rubber and 15 heat sinks per minute. And of course, we're going to be producing 15 heat sinks, which makes this really easy. We just need to merge the outputs and then run them straight to our blender. But the other thing that we need to do is take our 60 line of rubber, which we've already got here. We need to split it up so that we have 15 heading in this and then 45 heading up to the turbo motors. So for this, we're going to grab a splitter, and in front of this splitter, we're going to have another splitter. And so we've got 30 going through to here. Again, we've got now, if we split this, 15 going into the blender. We're going to have to merge those lines. So let's just place a merger, take the 15 and the 30, which leaves us with 45 rubber, which is going to go all the way up to our turbo motors. In fact, at this point, seeing as we're producing the cooling systems and the rubber, we might as well set up our turbo motor manufacturer. So it's going to be running at 100% clock speed. It's just the base recipe. Make sure that you've got the rubber going into the second input and the cooling systems are heading up to the first one. Hopefully, so far, so good. What I will do is jump across to the other layout that we've already done, that one there, once we've finished, so that you can see all the resource locations. But the next thing that we're going to be doing is working on the radio control units. So we're going to place that in this yellow box just up from our cooling systems. I'm going to make sure that it's in line. And then hopefully, oh, it's not. That's typical. Let's place, first of all, our manufacturer. It's because this is straddling both. So I shouldn't have painted this one in. But you can see here we've got the resources coming under. I'll talk about them in a moment, but I've aligned my manufacturer to that. I'm just going to bring it back a little bit so that we can actually get the resources in. It should be fine there. So this will be the motor, but we'll do that shortly. Next to this, we're going to place our radio control units. This requires computers, crystal oscillators, and our aluminum casing. Now this needs to be set to 150% clock speed. So you can see we need 60 aluminum casing, which, as you can see, we will be producing here. We're going to need 3.75 computers. And on top of that, we're also going to need some oscillators, which we'll talk about shortly. So let's connect our computers directly to the second input. We'll then have our aluminum frames running along the outside. And we're just going to run this all the way across to the second input. And then we'll have our third input, which is oscillators from this section here. So let's not worry about that too much. Just make sure that this is set to 150% clock speed. And then we can run that straight up into the third input of the manufacturer for the turbo motors. And then we have our oscillators. So for the oscillators, we're going to want to just grab that, place 3 manufacturers. I'm going to align this with the crossing edge of these two The first one, or the closest to the turbo motor, is going to produce the crystal oscillators, and this is going to be at 125% clock speed. So we're not going to merge these three lines together. We're going to make sure that this one heads straight into this manufacturer, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then the other two will merge together. So we're going to place a conveyor merger, and we're going to merge them together. This is then going to take our oscillators across to our radio control units. Now you'll notice we need to produce 1.875 per minute. Now we're going to be producing 2 per minute if these are together. We need 93.75% clock speed on both this manufacturer and this one to produce the oscillators that we need for this line. Now at this point, we need to bring various resources across to here. The first one will be the cables. So for this, we're just going to run a manifold, and while we're at it, we will also set up the other manifolds. So this one is for our cable, and then we're going to do another manifold above this. So this is 4 splitters high. And then we're going to do a third one, which is 5 splitters high. You can then delete all of the ones in between, like so. Connect these up. So one of these is going to be for our reinforced iron plates and one for our quartz. They're both below 60 items per minute, so you can use a Mark 1 line should you prefer. And then we're just going to bring the elevators up. Right, so let's bring those resources across. Now in this section we have, if I remember rightly, our copper ingots, our rubber, our plastic, copper sheets, and cable, followed by our aluminum ingots here. The next thing that we need to have is going to be one for stators and rotors, as well as our reinforced iron plates and our quartz crystal. So the next thing that we're going to do is bring all of these lines around the bottom left-hand corner. All of these lines can be Mark 1, so just be aware of that. They don't need to be a faster speed than Mark 1 unless you want them to be. And then once done, you should have these 4 lines here. So you have your rotors and your stators on these 2 lines. You then have your reinforced iron plates and your quartz crystal, or crystal quartz. So before we get any further, let's bring the rotors and the stators. These are going to run all the way across to the input of this line, which is underneath the map for me. So now that that's done, we'll return to that shortly. We're going to do the reinforced iron plates. Again, doesn't matter if it's a Mark 1 belt. And the quartz all the way to the top of the grid, and we will lift these up. So we're going to lift them up 2 and then 4, and that should be in line with these 2 manifolds. And there you are. We are now producing once it's running, we will be producing crystal oscillators for your radio control units, as well as the crystal oscillators for your motors, which is what this is going to be. So let's select rigger motor, and we only need 3.75 rotors and stators per minute, as well as 1.25 oscillators, which is coming from this line. Obviously, if you didn't want to use the oscillators and use quartz in this section of the build, then you don't have to. You could do a motor line, but that's going to require a few more rotors and stators. So the total build will be a slightly bigger footprint. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. Once set up, you want to send the motors to your turbo motor setup. And this is the completed layout. Unfortunately, you can't see all of the small signs, but what I will do is jump over to the build that's already running. And here we are with the running factory. Again, the belts are saturated, or a lot of them are, just because we're using Mark 1 belts when really we need less than that to run the facility. But everything is running. We're producing those turbo motors, and everything is pretty much in the exact same position. We've done a few of the loaders slightly differently, but it doesn't actually change the build in any way. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know what you'd be interested in seeing us do next as a simple layout to one of the more complicated items. Oh, and do let me know if you find this coordination with all the colors easier to follow than the previous ones. I know we haven't done this in a while. But guys, special thanks as always does go to all of our incredible supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Firefless, The Calamity, Ben, Star, and also our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Dr. Shotgun. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.